Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, as are the NBA and NHL playoffs. There are so many ways to get in the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from Major League Baseball to the NBA, the NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Penn State fans, are you feeling confident that the Nittany Lions can win college football's national championship next season? Lock in your futures bet at betonline.ag today. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone. Welcome to State of State. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. Today, we're talking about the growing hype and potential expectations surrounding Penn State football entering 2025. As if it wasn't big enough, Penn State credibly being able to contend for the national championship this coming season. I think that's been out there for a while. We've said it quite a bit here on this show, and you've slowly heard people from within the program even openly talk about the goal is to win a national championship this coming year. But beyond that, you're seeing more and more national pundits and outlets possibly predict Penn State to be the preseason number one. The last time Penn State was ranked number one was in 1997. So this would be pretty big if that were to happen. But also, Justin, as someone who has been a fan my entire life, attended the university, has covered the team professionally, when that level of hype and expectation gets put out there, it makes me a little bit nervous. How do you feel seeing that put out there by the likes of like Joel Klatt from ESPN? I've seen a lot of On3 reporters and go in that direction as well.
My initial thought was, just based on the expectations.
Right?
But and it also just confirms that the way that they've been building the roster throughout this transfer portal NIL era has been more sustainable and less herky-jerky and I guess reactionary than other teams. And that's why you continue to see them kind of nestled at the top of the expectation ladder when it comes to whether it's talent and just expectations overall because of how they've been building, right? Because, I mean, to finish top five last year, lose some guys to the NFL, somebody go top five, and 2 first-rounders, and then come back still being ranked in the top 5 is a pretty strong testament to sustainable team building.
Yeah, obviously the finish last year was encouraging. The nucleus you have returning this year is encouraging, and that's on the coaching staff and amongst the roster. Questions on the defensive side of the ball, I think, considering the departures that you were just talking about off to the National Football League. The wide receiver position continues to be talked about, and that's been addressed, in the transfer portal, but has it been solved? We're not going to know until the season really gets underway. So there are all these questions, but kind of looking at the general landscape of college football, I think it's a fair argument to say that Penn State could be the number one team in the country entering the season. I've seen people throw out Texas. I've seen people throw out Clemson. I've seen people even give Ohio State the benefit of the doubt, like the reigning national champions and what they can potentially bring back. So I think there's a lot of arguments to be made for all these different teams. It's just so interesting to me, Justin, is that like this is a fan base for a while that has felt confident that Penn State should be competing for national championships, at the very least Big Ten titles. But to hear that mantle of like, hey, you could be number one entering the season, it makes you nervous because it's not something that's been super commonplace at Penn State, to the points that I was just saying, well over 20 years since something like this may or may not happen. It just makes you a little bit nervous because it is kind of uncharted territory when you think about it. Is like, this is still a program that is evolving under James Franklin and getting over that hump. Everybody talk about winning the big game, that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, of course, but also like there's certain programs where they expect to be there. And I don't know, I think this is a fan base that expects to be there, but this is a program that's been very one game at a time, one day at a time, that sort of thing. And I don't know if the program is putting those expectations on itself. What do you think?
I mean, I think they put their expectations on being a top tier program in the sense
Yeah.
of competing with the best, but now it's just everyone else outside of State College expects it. I think it's just a little shift, but I don't think it's too big of a difference. Instead of like just showing that like there aren't as many visible holes going into the season. I think that's what the rankings show, and that they didn't lose that many players and they gained some different coaches. So I mean, I think it's just a testament to where they're at. I don't think internally they feel anything besides, everybody's want to get up for them, but everybody gets up for Penn State anyway.
It's, relatively calm at this point in the calendar. Obviously, training camp is right around the corner, but still the spring transfer portal window opened and closed. So Penn State is still able to go get guys out of the portal, but nobody else can enter the portal. I didn't have a chance to talk with you about this last week, but linebacker Amari Campbell from UNC transferring to Penn State. How did you feel about that acquisition?
That's a good pickup. I mean, I think that's a good pickup, especially, I mean, just this time of the year as well. Like, we get a quality guy. But again, we'll see how those things operate because the spring portal acquisitions are always, 50-50.
And the same thing, I kind of felt the same way about Trebor Pena, Syracuse wide receiver, and I had Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus on here earlier on in the week, and I've talked to a lot of people that were really excited about Pena coming on, and I'm like, yeah, it's great. He's got to get on campus and get acclimated in a short amount of time. Same thing with Amari Campbell, a guy who's got multiple years of eligibility, but it's kind of this. There's going to be more of a need for Campbell to step in and produce. What linebacker spot they want to utilize him at, we'll have to see within a 4-2-5 alignment. Whereas Trebor Pena, yeah, he's going to be expected to come in and produce, but it felt more like at wide receiver, that felt like an all-in move to me. I don't know how you felt getting Pena for the wide receivers as opposed to Campbell for the linebackers.
Well, I mean, I feel an all-in move. I think it's a need move, right? Like we're at a space where we need certain positions to fulfill this number one expectations. Like, not that the expectations are gone, but they're only there because there's a sustainable team around. I don't think you get into those top 5 spots unless you have critical positions with check marks next to them that have shown that they played and you can make predictable, predictions on the outcomes. Yeah, I just don't know what this guy necessarily brings or adds to the table from that standpoint. But I think adding that, like when you talk about adding like a Pena, yeah, it's already added to like the mix of an established squad. So it's just, where does he fit in? But again, it's a need thing, right? I think who's saying it? Like Les Snead talked about it when they used to make the different draft trades for win now versus draft picks. Like, forget those picks if it's not going to help us in this moment in the sense of winning the Super Bowl now. And I think you got to look at the situation for Penn State there. Like, they have a win now roster, and maybe just amping it up a notch in that receiver room is where they needed it. And linebackers, just depth is needed. So I think it's apples and oranges, but I think very beneficial.
According to Rivals, Penn State has a top 5 class for 2026. And 2026 feels like it's going to be an interesting year in that But I talked about this nucleus, both on the coaching staff and in terms of the roster that will be departing, is substantial. And like, I don't expect Andy Kotelnicki to be with Penn State beyond 2025. So I think that's a major piece. And then on top of that, it's like, okay, Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Denai Dennis Sutton, Zachy Wheatley, Zane Durant, like the list goes on and on of guys that you're potentially going to lose, not to mention pieces along the offensive line, elsewhere in the secondary. Like there's a lot of talent that could go. Do you feel like it would be a substantial drop off? Like that's why I use that phrase all in with the wide receivers. It felt like loading up that room as much as possible to make sure that you're able to go all in 2025, because 2026, the roster won't be the same, like for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, and it's a different position, right? Especially in this day and age when you're playing 4 receivers at a time. You just need the depth there of quality guys to have mismatches across the board, especially when you lose a dynamic tight end or your leading receiver last year was a tight end and your top receiver is gone. So like there are holes to fill in that spot. And I guess that's what I was referring to the last segment is the rest of the team seems to have pretty strong foundations moving into the season besides that receiver room. So, I mean, having some veteran presence that has production, I mean, it's critical.
What is that like as a player when the expectations jump? Like from your freshman season to your sophomore season, the expectations jumped dramatically.
Yeah, I think it comes down to every athlete. And I think that's a part of the evaluation process is that there's guys that are used to being at the top of the hill, I guess we'll say, and the expectations that they're always going to get the best punch. And I think you get a team of those guys coming out of high school, like they're not really like they're expecting the expectations, right? Instead of a bunch of underdogs or try hard guys that are like, oh, this is my first time at the top of the hill. It's a different makeup. And I think you mix those personality traits within the team. But I mean, you get the dynamic of like the front runner, the guys that only play well when they're in front and then they can't operate from behind. I think as long as the leadership is keeping guys grounded in what they do and that want to know mentality, you can have expectations of having end of the year dreams of winning a national championship. You just got to make sure you stick to the process.
And again, like I'd be stunned if you heard James Franklin just like outright say, yeah, our goal is to win a national title in 2025. And if he said that already, then shame on me. But I remember hearing it from Jim Knowles in his introductory press conference. And that was really like kind of the last of it. Like you might hear it from the occasional player here and there, but it does feel like something that this staff would put a lid on, and just that proverbial 1-0 mentality of like, hey, let's just handle one thing at a time in this situation. And there's plenty of people already looking at how the schedule could play out in 2025. It does once again kind of look like a 2-game season, 10 games that Penn State should win and 2 games where they might win. And it's Oregon, it's Ohio State. And those are big games. Oregon at home in September, on the road at Ohio State in November. A huge key for me, I think a huge storyline going into next season, Justin. Jim Knowles returning to Ohio State with Penn State on the road, like that's a huge matchup and that's a huge opportunity for Knowles, especially. And then like the huge question mark is like, has he helped Penn State enough on the defensive side of the ball to be able to stop big number 4, Jeremiah Smith and company? And then on top of that, has he helped Drew Aller in this, we've talked about it, that ESPN article the other week of that self-scouting aspect of like, here's how Ohio State and the elite teams have beaten you. Here's how you take that step.
Yeah, it's probably more of that, right? I think it's like, yeah, this is where we're not afraid of these things. We can play aggressive here. If you threaten guys in this area, it might loosen up this attack. But I mean, football is the ultimate chess game, right? On the field, and there's a lot of nuanced variables that come into play. And I think again, that's why when you have stability in your approach and the type of players that you bring in, you can kind of have some level of sustainability moving forward in an era where everything is so knee jerky and you don't know what's going to be tomorrow versus the next day. It provides great benefits. The programs that operate like that. And I think Penn State is one of those.
Speaking of the coaching staff, Penn State has added Alan Tucker to its staff as a special teams analyst. Tucker was most recently working under Gerard Parker at Troy, where Devontae Ross, very recent addition in the transfer portal, was playing. So Devontae Ross was important to the special teams game for Troy, and that's one of the intriguing parts for Devontae Ross's game to Penn State, that is, and that he can contribute as a wide receiver and somebody who can contribute in the special teams game. So that familiarity there is solid. And then also Torrance Brown is departing Penn State football and is off to Western Illinois to become their defensive line coach. So what do you feel about that addition and subtraction?
It's a great job. Congratulations to Torrance. I mean, it's always big moving up from a graduate assistant to having your own room. And again, that's another notch on James's belt, is bringing a guy back that played for him and getting a shot, another opportunity using sports as a catalyst to a career that you can bank on. And, Torrance is somebody that career ended in injury, and to get a start back in it and coaching and getting his own room at a young age, it's a beautiful thing. Congrats and Godspeed on a future great career.
Coming back to Devontae Ross specifically, it's been interesting to hear all this conversation about the wide receivers, and that theoretically the top three guys, we'll see how the depth chart plays out once we get into the season, but it at least feels like on paper it's three transfers in Hudson, Ross, and Pena. And it felt like, at least from what we could understand from spring practices, winter workouts, the blue-white game, is that Devontae Ross has picked things up quickly and has looked very, very good within this passing game. So I don't know. We were talking about Pena before, and I think fans saw the numbers Pena put up at Syracuse, 80-plus catches, over 900 yards, 9 touchdowns. Great numbers, but it's an air raid offense, pass-happy system, much higher volume of pass attempts. So, and he was the number one option. They moved him all over the field. So I just don't expect those numbers. And I think that's the thing. It's kind of like, who's going to be the guy? We're not going to know until late September, maybe October. I don't know how you feel.
I don't think you have to expect those numbers, but I do expect production. When you have 80 catches, I think you can bank 50. I think you can bank 50 around an attack that doesn't make him the focal point at a Penn State versus a Syracuse. I think that's a 45. I think you can reasonably make that transition. And from that, you move forward and see who else can step up from the other guys in the room. And we still have a dynamic, duo in the backfield that we can hand the ball off to. So it's like, it's going to be an interesting season.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be necessarily a breakdown between Hudson, Ross, and Pena of like 40, 30, 30, not necessarily assigning that number to anybody in particular. But again, like, you had over 100 completions to Tyler Warren. So it's been said before by Franklin, Kotelnicki, Aller, like, those completions have to go somewhere. Do they go to wide receivers? Is it Khalil Dinkins, Luke Reynolds, Andrew Rapplier, tight end, running backs?
100 catches is special talent. It's a special talent that gets 100 catches. I mean, that's just not drawing up design. That's a mismatch against everybody on the field. So you got to understand, when someone gets 100 catches, that you can move around. They pose a threat in one-on-one matchups, not necessarily drawing up and scheming guys to get open. Not to say, well, I am saying that's more of Pena's game and air raid offense. I don't know if he's just that dominating, hey, let's move him here and try to get him 100 catches. But within the offense and where they fit to running backs and how Kotelnicki likes to draw things up, I think he can provide not even a safety blanket, but that senior presence of production for someone for Drew this season in that area in the offense.
The irony, Justin, is like, they're going to run the hell out of the ball in 2025. So, like, we spend all this time talking about
100%.
They're going to run that.
Yeah, the better question is, like, can he block? Can he replace the blocking from Julian Fleming?
Then you're like, please get Julian Fleming back. What
That's
a great block.
Can he replace the blocking, block down, and get that backhand safety?
Yeah. Well, we got to see what the wide receiver room develops into. Defensively, you have to see what the pass rush looks like outside of Denine Ennis Sutton and Zane Durant. Depth of defensive tackle is a question mark. That other defensive end spot is a question mark. There's going to be lots of competition there. Linebacker is a question mark, even though you go and get Amari Campbell. What does his production look like? Tony Rojas is somebody who I think this is going to be a really interesting year for him. He posted, I believe it was on social media, saying that he ran a 4.37 recently in his 40-yard dash. Don't know if that's, take that for what it is. Saw that on social media. Might be right, might be wrong, but still extremely impressive for a guy who was beat up a lot of last season and still played at a very high level. And the thing that's really cool for me is seeing a guy who's a senior, and Tony Rojas is like one of those guys who's waving the flag for the program. Like I see him consistently on social media where whether it's future recruits or, even Amari Campbell was telling him like, come to
He's a
Penn
senior?
State, that sort of thing. He's listed as a senior.
Tell you what, man, this time goes so fast.
Right. Like I'm still messed up, dude.
I'm like, I thought he was. It was
COVID
like
years.
it was yesterday. He was a recruit. I'm like, he's a senior? Like,
let me double check. So yeah, he's. Oh no, I'm sorry. He's listed as a junior. Forgive me.
okay. I was about to say
He's listed as a
man.
junior. Okay, I was close. Sorry.
Okay,
about that.
no, I didn't even make my bad to catch.
Still
like,
an upperclassman who,
upperclassman.
yeah. There you go. So you're like, hell, if Tony plays out, this could be his last year at Penn State.
Yeah,
He plays great.
very
But
true.
I think it's really cool to see a new crop of leaders stepping up, and the fact that he is actively trying to recruit guys, whether they're here now or here later, trying to get guys to come to Penn State. And I don't know. I don't know what role Amari Campbell necessarily plays within this defense. Last year at 6.5 sacks, which is, we're talking about that pass rush. Is he someone who contributes more there? If there's two primary linebacker spots, like is he the next guy off the bench, that sort of thing? Or is he spelling a Dom DeLuca? They want to use him in different situations. Is it more Campbell and Rojas? Remains to be seen.
I mean, moving around on defense is extremely interesting because it's
especially linebacker.
100% because the positions are so different, and like what they're asked to do, depending on the coordinator, is so different. Whether they're blitzing or showing different things that go along with another blitz. Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting a big year from Rojas at the end of the day. I don't think there's a guy that we're expecting to be just that dynamite guy at the mid tier. I think he can be that. I mean, running 4.37, just the physics of it. He's a big kid. And again, like I said, him coming out of high school, that's still what I remember. But like him now getting there, he has the makeup and the metrics to kind of be that next guy up. So I'm excited to see how Coach Knowles moves him and uses him on the attack. I'm on the defense side of the ball.
The run defense is going to be a question mark. There's a lack of experience at defensive tackle, and definitely some guys that have been recovering from injury behind Zane Durant. So that's going to be a question mark. Kobe King was a big part of that run defense last year. So who steps up in that capacity? I think you're going to see this team defensively rely on the secondary more than it has in recent years, in that it just feels like a very deep defensive back room. So being able to just provide those coverage pressures, coverage sacks, those sorts of situations, if there are questions in terms of the guys that can really just organically get after the quarterback without having to be schemed up, that sort of thing. I think what Terry Smith has cultivated within Lockdown U for this upcoming season should be something people are looking at as intriguing. But again, we point out all these individual things of like, all right, it's question of wide receiver and pass rush, linebackers, depth at D tackle, that sort of thing. And then you try and back out to this whole conversation of, is Penn State the number one team in the country entering the 2025 season? I don't know how much you pay close attention to other teams around the country or how you feel about that in general. But I mean, I could buy the argument. And also, I'm not going to sit here and be disappointed if Penn State's 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like that.
Yeah, I think you could lock them in. I mean, they finished top 5 last year, and they've been recruiting at a high clip. Again, the sustainability or the stability on the roster where they're not losing a whole bunch of important guys in the offseason, and then they pick up who they need to get in the transfer portal from a selection base type of situation. Like I said, recruiting at a high clip, getting good coaches in. Yeah, I mean, a top 3, 4 type of preseason ranking is, I would say, is expected. And again, when I even mentioned coming up from the spring ball visit, and I saw like just the nature of the team and how it looked, and it looked like an elite program and team from just like the size standpoint, I'm not surprised for them being a top 2 or 3 team at all. Like that's what it looks like. So I've been to some other schools' practices, and I've been traveling around a little bit more, and I have a little bit more, even more respect for just the base level of talent that is at Penn State.
It's the fun thing about your experience is that you know what it looks like when you open your eyes and you see it playing out 5 feet in front of you. Right. And then the interesting thing about all of this is like, oh, this is the post-spring top 25. And I was like, we don't know. Like even these top 25s that'll come out in August, something like that, is like half of it is done based on the brand.
For
So
sure.
it's not necessarily a team that's really worthy of the spot. It's just like, well, I feel like they should be here because they're in this conference and this is the brand next to it.
Well, I would say, like, just speaking to people that are in like those ranking circles, I would say that that's not their approach of ranking the brands anymore, because the brands don't hold as much weight. They do, but the transfer portal and how people have been moving when you're like judging the teams versus who's leaving, who's coming back, and guys continue to mature and develop. I think that forecasting is a lot more interesting and I guess nuanced when you look at it, because it's a little bit bigger than the brands now, because we're seeing, hey, USC was ranked whatever, but they end up winning 5 or 6 games because the brand did not match up with the players or even the chemistry. Again, we talk about stability, and we understood that Texas A&M bringing in the highest paid NIL class, highest recruited class, and all that good stuff. Coaching staff got fired the next year. So just those predictors of success we've been learning over the past 5 years, I think, have been going into the ratings. And that's why you continue to see certain teams, like even like a Clemson, who has been headstrong about their philosophy and not jumping into the different flavors of the month throughout NIL. And now they're starting to creep back up because they're getting their guys that stick within. And I just think as things flush out, you'll see the programs and the personnel, people behind the scenes, start really peacocking and showing their skills versus just everybody winning based on DNA and collecting talent like they did in the past.
Hop in our comment section on YouTube. Get at us on social media. Who do you think at least the top 5 could be entering 2025? Very curious to hear what you guys think. Thank you all so much for joining us here on State of State, and a very happy belated birthday to number 7, in some programs, number 1 in our program. He's Justin King. Happy belated birthday, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.